What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the Dr. Vibe Show, home of epic conversations. As always, thank you. I just thought about that tagline a few weeks ago, and people said, "Yeah, go with it. Go with it."
It's great.
So, I'm the host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show. I'm also a certified empowerment coach, president of Express Your Vibe coaching and communications. And as always, we like to stay, especially with this man on. We're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem.
Too kind, bro. Too kind.
Absolutely. No, it's honest. And for those who don't know a little bit about the Dr. Vibe Show, most Tuesday nights we do a conversation for men and those who love them. And I sometimes find it challenging because I don't know what to chat about with men. Because of course we don't talk, we just think about work, but we're just there. But tonight, double blessing. First of all, have Jay, and I've not seen him for a while, and he's been very committed to pastoral duties and his family of 7. That keeps him really going. But he's back with us for a little bit, and then also we have a great conversation piece tonight: men and communication.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I bring this conversation piece up, because I always hear the ladies say, "You men don't talk. You don't talk. You don't got nothing to say." This, that, the other thing. So I said, you know what? Let's just throw it out there. So this conversation's for men and those who love them. If you want to jump in, there's seats, there's commentary on the side. I also want to give a big shout out to someone who we have not had on the platform before, Lamille, who is a mother of 8, a manifesting coach, author, and a holistic practitioner. So thanks for stopping by. So Jay, first of all, what have you been up to? Haven't seen you for a bit.
I know. I'm sorry I missed so much. You've done a lot of stuff in the meanwhile. Well, sometimes, pastor stuff is kind of a breeze and you're kind of like floating by. Everything is great. And then every once in a while, the world seems to just blow up, and church life is messy life. It's good life. But, so doing that and preparing sermons, sometimes it just keeps me busy. Good busy.
Excellent. Well, thanks for taking some time to jump in tonight. Also, I'd like to thank Be More LLC for stopping by. Ryan Perez, my fellow Connect, thanks for stopping by. The seat is always open for you. So before we start drilling down into the conversation, when you hear the topic men and communication, what comes to your mind?
Well, it's funny. My wife asked me, she goes, what are you guys talking about tonight? And I said that very title. And she said, you don't have a problem talking. And it's really true. I'm not one of those guys that has nothing to say. I always have maybe too much to say. I don't know, but for men in general, we tend to be the less verbal people, the gender on a whole. And I think most of the time, I think it's just because, what I found in all the men workshops and seminars that I've done, men sometimes feel like they don't really have anything to offer, anything important to say, and they would rather do something than say something.
Okay, we're going to drill down on that one. We're going to definitely drill down on that. But before
yes, indeed.
Further, Tony, come on in.
Indeed.
Long time wasn't able to join you in the Blab on Sunday because Blab was having some challenges. Leroy, thanks for stopping by. Evan, the seats are open. I want you to come in on this conversation tonight. But getting back to Jay, when you're saying men don't have anything to say, where does that come from, in your opinion?
At least they feel that way.
Why do you feel men?
I think it comes from a lot of men having issues with their own identity. Yeah, I just feel like sometimes men have a trouble with their own identity, and certainly for the past maybe 10 or 20 years now, the society has told us that men we're the troublemakers. We're the ones that cause the problems. We're the ones that the world has issue with, and certainly there's some truth to that. And I think a lot of men's they hide behind this mask of, well, I'm going to be stoic. I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to do, and I don't have to really talk about my feelings or my emotions. And they get caught in this rut of not feeling like they have anything important to say, which is the farthest thing from the truth, So that's kind of still on a surface level what I think, but it's true.
You being a pastor, you encounter or do have a lot of conversations with men. Do men have challenges communicating just with you one-on-one?
Again, in my small circle, I'm very fortunate. I've said on the show before, I have about 10 or 15 men who are been my band of brothers for some over 30 years. And so we have a history of being able to get in each other's face, have strong dialogue, have strong conversations. But when I travel around and talk to different men's groups, I find, when after the seminar is over and men come up to me, they feel like, for the first time, I've heard this comment a lot. For the first time, I really feel like someone's giving me permission to talk, to share my heart, and because they felt frozen by so many different maybe life events, certainly wounds, father wounds, mother wounds, all kinds of society wounds that I think forces men, especially, deep down inside themselves. And then they find it very hard to express how they feel, what they're thinking about. What's the most feared question on the planet when your wife comes up and says, "What are you thinking about?" That'll freeze a man like
Nothing.
dead in their
They
tracks.
always say nothing, right?
I'm not thinking about anything. And a lot of times that's true. We're not thinking about nothing. We're really thinking a lot of things, but we just don't find the words sometimes or the time. I think men need more time to express themselves. They need space, time.
When you hear men come up to you and say, "This is the first time I've had a chance to talk," how do you feel when you hear that, and you hear that so often?
Yeah, I am so hurt by it. Not for them, because I feel so honored and privileged. My wife gives me plenty of space to share my heart and the deep thoughts that I have. I'm a deep thinker. I'm a dreamer. I'm a visionary. I have friends who do the same thing for me. So I'm very fortunate that I have that in my life. And to think that there are men out there that don't have at least one person that they can actually share their heart with is so painful to hear. But when they're set free, and some of these seminars that I've been able to share in, and they finally feel like they have the permission and the right to be able to speak, share their heart, I see a new freedom in their eyes. And it's a painful thing, but it's also a wonderful thing to see them finally realize, hey, wait a minute, I can communicate. I don't have to be afraid of communicating, which I think is part of the deal as well.
Absolutely. This is good stuff already. Excuse me. Got a question already for you to address. And also the other men, please jump into this conversation, and ladies too. Here's a question. Do you feel men's lack of verbal self-expression is innate or conditioned? Great question.
Yeah. It's a wonderful question. Yeah. I think it's kind of both. I mean, because, I grew up in a home, as you know my story, I grew up in an abusive home. So I wasn't allowed to speak. I had to watch the questions that I asked. Questions as simple as, can I have a drink of water? Would have been a violent response to that question at times. Not violent in words, but violent in action towards me. And so I learned to frame my speech judiciously, so I used my words sparingly. So in that way, for a while, I was one of those guys that couldn't speak. It felt like he couldn't. And that was conditional because of the conditions that were inside my home at the time, the abusive structure of my home. When I came to Jesus Christ and my heart was set free and I began to discover who I was as a man, my voice was released as well. So I think it was kind of both. It's innate in some personalities. I have guys who are, when they do talk, it's wonderful, but you know what? They don't their personality is quiet, and that's okay. And I don't think we're talking about that. I think those men have no problem self-expressing themselves when they get the opportunity, and when they feel like it's necessary for them to speak up. It's not a freezing moment. It's not conditional in the sense of some kind of abuse or some kind of wound. It's just their personality.
Well, you know what? The conversation is going to get turned up because Tony's coming in now. Now we're going to. Now this is good stuff. This is gonna. Everybody get ready. This is. You know what? You know what's beautiful about this? I have not had you guys on for such a long time. It's beautiful that we're having you both on together. How are you, Tony? How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Absolutely great.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And I'm keeping track of your challenges, and those are so inspiring. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Dr. Vibe. 90 pounds plus gone.
Nice.
Today marks 269 days that I've been off my 3 diabetic medications. And
praise God, that's wonderful.
And I have to say that if it were not for the support and encouragement that I received from my, I'm going to say streaming family, because I'm not going to say blab, I'll say streaming.
Yeah.
That I'm not sure I would have been able to make it. And so there have been times where it's been easier than others, but I've been able to stay on the path, and I'm fighting to lose 8 more pounds so that I can say that I've lost 100 pounds since I've been on the journey.
Wonderful.
And once I do that, then I'm working on my next 100. And that's when I will be at my goal weight. And that's what I'm looking forward to. So I just wanted to just share that with you guys. And thank you so much for your encouragement and your tweets and all of the positive comments and likes and other things that you guys have done since I've been on this journey. And I just say this, that part of the reason that I do this is because, and I've shared this with you before, Dr. Vibe, that there are others who are dealing with diabetes, and we typically don't talk about it. We suffer in silence, and we choose not to, talk about it because, in part, a lot of us are embarrassed about being morbidly obese, and how did we let ourselves get to this point, and all of the things that go into it, but it's a vicious cycle that once you start getting on the medications, that's really when your health goes downhill. And so I just want to share with you that that's the reason that I do it, and that's why I put myself out there, because I know that there are other people who are suffering in silence, and don't share, don't talk about it, don't ask for help. And so that's why I do it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a good segue in what we're chatting about tonight, sharing about tonight, men and communication. When you look at this subject, Tony, what are your thoughts? Because also you've been involved in helping many men in your journey. And what I love is both of you have such evaluated experience when it comes to this conversation piece. What do you have to say about this? And also, welcome, Xanadu. Thank you so much. If you want to jump in, you're more than welcome to. But Tony, go ahead.
Well, Dr. Vibe, I'm always going to have to go there. And I have to go back to, for most African-American men, it goes back to slavery. And the reason why I say that is because you have to understand that on the plantation, men had no voice at all, and that it was the women who were the ones that communicated with the master. Men weren't allowed to have an opinion. They weren't able to vocalize their thoughts, their feelings. Now, between them and the woman, that was different. But in terms of interaction and communication with the plantation owner, that was not allowed. And so the woman had to negotiate or had to ask master, for permission to keep her children in the plantation without being sold. Any benefits, the leftovers, the scraps from the table, that was all from the female, the woman, the Black woman. And so it is an issue more so in the Black community than I think it's an issue for men, period. But I think it's more of an issue for Black men because I think in a larger sense, African American men are still trying to figure out a consistent way of communicating.
Okay, I'm gonna parking lot that just for a second. Jay, first of all, do you agree with that? Second of all, do you think that men who are white, and you can't speak for all white men, but do you feel that there is that sort of, how can I say, block of free form communication with men? Is because it's obviously Tony is coming from evaluated experience. Do you feel that men, let me put it this way, Jay, do you feel there's a lot of men that are screaming and nothing's coming out?
Oh yeah. I mean, it shows up in their actions, of course, and what they choose to self-medicate with, perhaps. And it can be, obviously drugs or drinking, the usual subjects, or it could be work and career and money and all those kind of things that we use to do our communicating for us, and maybe especially in the white community, maybe that's more of a prevalent thing. But I think men in general, we have this, or we could have, we believed a lie about ourselves. Most of society says that we can't communicate well. And if we do communicate, we communicate wrong. You can see it in how many men, quality men, do you see in TV shows? I can't name one TV show that has a positive figure, male figure, off the top of my head. I can't think of one. In most of the movies, if they're heroes, there's some kind of flawed hero that is almost like an anti-hero. And they don't talk, they don't communicate, they let their actions do the talking for them. And I think that's just an injustice to all men everywhere. But I appreciate what Tony said because, coming from a white person's point of view, we need to hear what Tony just shared. I mean, because that helps us understand, and maybe get our minds around this, and perhaps we can bridge gaps and help other men of different colors, to come out of the shadow and to be able to communicate and then hopefully give them a space and a place at the table to talk and so we can learn, because what better communication is. Reconciliation is the best kind of communication that there is between two people. And so I appreciate what you shared, Tony. Thank you for sharing that.
I'm gonna throw something out here. How can I say? I just did a little bit of research ahead of time in regards to this subject. I just pulled some things out, and I want to get both your comments about this when it's suggested about men. So one of the things that is out there about men when it comes to communication is men don't often like to give details. Is that true?
I think it depends on the subject matter.
True, exactly. That's a good comeback.
I mean, if we're talking about the 69 Mets, I might be able to give you a lot of details.
Right.
If we're talking about how I feel this morning, well, maybe not so much, depending on who I'm talking to as well. I think who am I speaking with is also might be a qualifier there.
Tony, what do you have to say?
Well, I think that, like Jay said, that it may depend on the circumstances. I just reflect on some of the things that sometimes my wife has to pull stuff out of me, and
Mhm.
there are depending on what the subject matter is, there are those times when it is those one word answers, and
Mhm.
there's not a lot of detail, and I think that part of it for most men might be that because we've been indoctrinated to think that we have to be, the leader. We have to
Mhm.
be the one who can take anything, endure anything, be able to handle anything. That when we are struggling, we tend to shut down,
Yes.
and we hide. We
Mhm.
hide our fear. We hide our anger. We hide most of our emotions, and in part that's why our women outlive us, because we
Yes,
keep all that stuff inside of us.
a good point.
And
Very good point.
Yep.
Very, we are
Yep.
joined by Angel in Training. How are you?
Hello, everyone. Excuse my appearance. I'm
Hello.
in Las Vegas and it is so hot here. I just jumped in from the pool and I didn't want to miss
Nice.
Dr. Vibe's broadcast.
Oh, well, I'm humbled. Well, and
Uh,
Angel, you bring a very unique perspective because your background
yes.
adds another dimension about men and communication. So, before you share about what you feel about this subject, give a little bit about your background so people can say, "Oh, she's going to have something interesting to say."
Well, thank you for that very kind introduction. um, I am a retired corrections officer of 23 years, and I worked predominantly with individuals, the males that were incarcerated. And I dealt
Wow.
with everyone from traffic violations to death row inmates. I usually worked with the male felons, and I averaged between 100 to 120 inmates that were under my supervision.
Wow. Wow.
And yeah,
Great.
that's where the gift of gab, thank you, Jesus, came in handy. And in reference to Dr. Vibe's topic, whoops, just got a message. Something I feel that my opinion is that a person's environment is a factor as to how much or how little they communicate. In the environment that I was in, it was important for those individuals who were incarcerated to establish a pecking order. And because of that, their style of communication, the terminology and vocabulary that they use, as well as their body language, which is also a form of communication, was
Yes,
quite
indeed.
different than, say, going to a restaurant or a party. And I find that to be a factor as far as men communicating.
That's a very unique perspective. And for those, just telling people ahead of time, soon, don't know exactly when, we're going to get Angel on as a guest to share some of
Oh,
her
thank you.
about, because I
Mhm.
think there's not too many times we get someone who has been through that experience for that period of time on the program.
Yeah.
So, Jay and Tony, what do you have to say to what Angel has said about the environment contributing to a man's communication style?
well, I mean, I think she's dead on with that. Uh, the environment, the interaction with the parent, or parents, or the lack thereof parents. I think all of that are factors. I think that if I look at my own history and my own learning and growing up environment, my parents, my mother was different from the typical parent in my community, and by that I mean I grew up in the infamous city of Newark, New Jersey. And one of the things that she did was she didn't let the community define us. And by that, I mean, she went above the board in terms of exposing us to the richness of culture and the things that exist in the world. And the examples that I would give you is that she would take us. Now, I remember being, a small child and not even really old enough to really understand what was happening. But I remember very distinctly us getting on the train and going to New York City. And we went to Radio City Music Hall. And we watched a performance of the Rockettes. I remember going to the theater district and going to matinees and watching plays. And my mother was, a factory worker. At that time, all she had was a high school education. But she understood very clearly that it was important for us to have exposure and outlets. And, so we went to the theater, we went to Radio City Music Hall, we went to museums, we expanded outside of our culture, our community. And the ironic thing was that I thought that that's what everybody did, but I didn't know at the time that wasn't what everybody did. And it really kind of hit home with me after I finished college, because I went to work at a Boys and Girls Club in Decatur, Georgia. And it was a very small community, and the people who lived in that community, for all intents and purposes, were housing or low-income apartment dwellers. There were very few homeowners, and their world existed primarily of that community. Very seldom did they ever leave that community. And I would say that is typical of a lot of urban communities. The thing was that you would go to your school, you might go to the movies, and then, in the church, and that was it. And during the summer, you would go visit your grandparents if they were still in the South. And you would spend the summer with them, and then you would go back to the North. And I'm generalizing, but I have to say that because I think my mother was different in terms of the exposure, it prepared, I'm going to say, her children, because I'm one of 7, and all of us went to college, and of the 7, 5 finished.
Wow.
college.
Wow.
So
Awesome.
and so the other two didn't finish, but that was because they didn't want to, not because they couldn't. And so, and then one of the ones that didn't finish, my sister, who's next to me, she actually is like 12 credits out, short of having an engineering degree.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
you know, but I said all that to say that when you talk about environment influencing your communications, I think that you're right on with that. You know, I took a long way to get there, but absolutely, the environment is probably one of the most critical things, and then the interaction amongst your role models, be it your parents or those mentors that we've all had in our lives as time has gone by.
Jay, I want.
May I
No,
ask
go ahead,
a-
Angel.
oh, I'm
Please go
sorry.
ahead.
Excuse me for interrupting. May I ask a question? And this may come across as naive, and that's okay. So be it. I'm fair-skinned. Most people would call me white. Okay, politically correct Caucasian. I'm not sensitive that way. Okay, most people would consider me white. I'm actually of Hispanic descent, Mexican. Okay, but I'm so light and fair-skinned, I pass as white. Okay, as I'll just say a white woman. And I realize, and this question is directed more towards Dr. Vibe and Mr. Tony. Would you two gentlemen say, as African Americans, that when you are around whites, Caucasians, okay, or other ethnicities, do you find the need, either consciously or subconsciously, to alter your form of communication?
Tony, you go ahead, Tony, because I can jump all over that. If you want me to handle that one, Tony, I will.
And I ask this question to seek knowledge.
Tony?
Well, I go back to talking about.
Is that an inappropriate question to ask?
It's not a problem. It's not a problem. I was going to say that I think foremost for me, I don't mind telling you how old I am. I'm 58 years old.
Same here.
And so my experience, my interaction with people, and the way in which my mother instructed me to be a communicator is different from an African American man who may be 20 or 30 years younger than I am. Because I'm not going to say that my mother wanted us to emulate majority culture, but I will say that it was important to her that we would be able to handle ourselves in a way that whatever thoughts that we had were conveyed and understood.
Would be better received, perhaps?
For me, it's problematic. And the reason why I say that is because I think that the reason that my mother was the way she was because she was a victim of racism from white people, and she was a victim of racism from black people. And you might say, well, how was that possible? Well, she was a very dark-skinned woman, and her whole mindset, or her whole shaping of her life, was that regardless to how people viewed me, I'm going to excel. And so
Tony, I'm gonna stop you right there because that's taking us to a whole other conversation. And I will say, Angel,
Yes.
it's an upcoming conversation piece on the Dr. Vibe show.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna. I have a title for it already, so don't worry. In the next few weeks, you're gonna see a title, and they'll go, "What does he mean by that title?" Well, you just remember the conversation we had tonight,
Yes.
and that will come back to it. What I want to do is I want to bring the conversation back a little bit. And one of the things that I've heard that when it comes to a man is that we meant what we said, often not what you heard. So what I'm meaning by that is, so when a man says
Yes.
something, try to hear only what he says without attracting any extra thoughts triggered by emotions.
So literally.
Yes.
The words that are used, take them. Well, men are more linear thinkers, and they tend to say what they mean. Whereas women,
Jay's shaking his head there. What's going on, Jay?
Only because I am so unlinear as a person. I am all over the place. I'm an artist. I'm a dreamer. I'm a business, and I go so off tangent is incredible. My wife is more linear than I am, believe me. And so, but I'm unusual. I'm not the norm.
And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. People need to feel comfortable in their skin.
I hope so.
Yes. And Dr. Vibe,
yes,
I really do
indeed.
thank you and appreciate you for having this type of platform where individuals feel comfortable to ask questions without someone taking offense, because unfortunately, too many individuals are afraid of other ethnicities due to lack of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And I was raised predominantly around Mexicans and whites. And I remember the first time I met an African-American gentleman. Oh, I could not shut up. I asked so many questions. And then my best friend, her family was from Holland. And I wanted to know, why do they do this? Why do they do things that way, et cetera, the foods that they eat. I just so enjoy the variety of ethnicities here in Las Vegas. And I find that when I go back home, which is Los Angeles, and I see predominantly Mexicans, it feels strange to me. I actually feel uncomfortable because I think, wow, look at all of these Hispanics. Where are the white people? Where are the blacks? Where are the Asians? Where did everybody go?
That leads me into a conversation piece that I wanted to make sure it would come out tonight. How do men communicate with other men when it's foreign environment? Take care, Tony. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to have met you. Thank you for my questions.
No problem, Tony. Take care. So Jay and Ahmed, that was one of the conversation pieces I wanted to get to tonight is, how do men, first of all, break the barrier of going into another environment they're not used to with another type of men? And I'm sure Ahmed can talk about this too. So when you have to communicate in an environment that is not, a term, your home environment, how easy is that for you to communicate?
Me? Is that for me?
Well,
yeah,
either one of you. If people want, you can ask me the same question, but I wanted to see what you gentlemen had to say first, because I know both of you do a lot of work in environments that are not your home environment. So I know you're very good at it now, but compare when you first had to do it to now. What communication styles you use to get proficient doing that today?
Yeah, I mean, when I try to do, when I learned over the years from my a person I call my spiritual father. He taught me well. how to go into a room and introduce yourself to as many people as possible and get to know something about them that you can relay back to them. So that's how I go into a men's seminar. I try to meet as many men before I actually get up there to speak as possible. And sometimes I can meet up to 100 men before I get to the stage. And it's beautiful for me because I already got the crowd for one reason. That's good to do. But more importantly, I've got to know these men, at least initially, so the conversations after I get done speaking are that much richer and that much more beautiful in the way they express things to me, because they feel like, hey, I know this guy. He's not just some speaker who came in to spout some kind of information. He's one of us. And so I learned that the first time. Yeah, connecting is absolutely. But I learned that from my spiritual dad. And he taught me that was important because people are important. Not just because you want to have a successful talk. That is important, but not as important as people are important. And that changed my my view on going to a crowd of people of all kinds of different nationalities and genders even, just to be able to say, hey, I want to meet as many of you as possible because you're important. And they can feel that. And that's really a powerful way of communicating.
How are
Fantastic, sir?
Good stuff. Thanks for stepping in. And also, I'd like to thank Tony for stepping out, for you to step in. So much appreciated on both of your parts. What do you have to share about this conversation, men in communication?
Yeah, it's really, really important. And I'm glad that you're having this conversation. And I kind of would like to, I don't want to be all over the place, but I would like to definitely address Sri Baba about how we changing communication styles. I listened to my father as a young child talk on the phone a lot to clients, and he did a lot of spiritual work as well. And I listened to him counsel people, and I find myself at my age emulating his style of oration, as well as how he led people and connected with people. I do find that when I'm communicating with other groups other than my home group, that I have to make my style more precise so that my message is conveyed more clearly, and it is in a linear way. So that I speak exactly was what I want to say. I don't, if I need something to be taken in another manner, I'll preface the statement beforehand.
May I ask? Oh, I'm sorry.
That I may.
Oh, I apologize. There's a
No,
bit of delay. May I ask your occupation, or are you a public speaker?
I am a public speaker, but I am I'm in the world of finance and private banking. So I do a lot of talks with whites, foreigners, to raise capital for different real estate projects. And I have to make sure that when I'm communicating, that it is in a very streamlined manner.
And that you're aware of their customs
so
as well,
that,
because especially the Japanese have certain customs and proprieties that they adhere to very strictly.
Correct. So, so with that, I'm really familiar with the Japanese customs, Asian customs, because I studied a lot of martial arts as I was growing up. I've been a lifelong martial arts practitioner. I've studied a lot about cultures of the Middle East and what their practices are. Indian culture as well. Really familiar with the works of Shakti Sai Baba as well. So I try to make sure that I'm pretty adept in a lot of different cultures, so that when I'm conveying my message, that it's received well.
That makes sense. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. With this, so Ahmed, Ahmed and Jay, outside of your, well, in Jay's case, it wasn't the greatest environment, but it formed his communication style. Ahmed, you listened to your father. Do you still have people in your life that influence the way you communicate to other people?
Yeah, I would say yes. I mean, my Frank Benanelli is the spiritual dad, which I speak of. He came into my life about 27 years ago when my wife and I were first married, before we had kids, and him and his wife kind of mentored us. And although he lives in the far state of Idaho right now, he still influences me because he'll check in on me, he'll ask me how I'm doing, and then he'll ask me meaningful questions about my relationship with my wife, my children, and those kind of things. And then he'll ask me, he goes, well, how are you communicating your love towards them? And it's a huge question. And I guess he does it. He hones my communication skills by challenging all of them.
Ahmed, and then we'll get to the question on the side, because it's another good one for both of you.
Yeah. So, Bruce Lee had a statement. He said, take what is useful and discard what is useless. And I find myself borrowing communication styles and tactics and techniques from pretty much everyone that I encounter. So, I really like Dr. Vibe's communication style, how he's a great listener, and he asks a lot of questions before he comes to even make a statement about a particular thing or comes to judgment on a particular matter. He asks a lot of questions, sometimes very difficult questions. but yes, I borrow communication styles from pretty much everyone that I come in contact with.
Excellent. There's a question on the side from Xanadu, and it's say I have tough questions. She's got a good one. How would you as men suggest that women cultivate communications in their young son?
Excellent question.
Or with their Good question for both of them. And if Tony, if you want to add it on this, or Cliff, you want to add on this, certainly type it on the side. But gentlemen, go ahead. That's a serious question.
I have 5 sons. Of the 7 children, 5 of my kids are boys. And I wish I could just bring my wife in here, because she can answer this question a whole lot better than I can. But she really could. But it's something that Ahmed just said a little while ago. Listening is the best way to start a conversation. It really is. To give, I found out, even though I'm a great communicator and my wife is a great communicator, we found that our young men had difficulty at first communicating their deep thoughts, their innermost thoughts, even though their parents were great at communication, great listeners too, especially my wife. And I would say that you have to find the space, and you have to find the time, and then you have to give them permission to talk without interjecting, without commenting, without trying to fix whatever they're saying. And if you can do that, if you can listen, active listening, try to repeat back to them what they've said, and maybe in different words, so that you show that you understood. I found out that that's the way that I got my boys to open up. And now as young men, they can all communicate very, very well. And I give the glory, a lot of prayer too, a lot of prayer.
Excellent
for this too. But that's
Ahmed.
That's kind of what I think.
I think the best way to cultivate communication in young sons is to have them around strong and effective men that are good at communicating. That that's how a lion teaches the cub how to be a lion. By the young cub hears the roar of the lion, and he then begins to emulate that style. So I think by having them in the environment, sometimes men, we tend to be nonverbal communicators. So sometimes when we are communicating with each other, it could be from a glance, it could be from a handshake, it could be, how we may bump into one another, the communication of a hug, how we do it. So communication for men is a little different. It's not always verbal. Sometimes it's about posture that the communication happens. So I think that by having a young son around other men, positive men, is a great way to do it as well.
Excellent. And I want to welcome some more people. Welcome Cliff Bodenweiser. Thank you so much for stopping by. I appreciate it. And also Leon from over in England. Thanks so much. And just some comments here. A streaming voice says, boys model men. Absolutely. Very, very true. So there is a seat open if someone wants to jump back in. I don't know if I know she jumped out, Angel in training. She may jump back in, but whoever gets in the seat first gets it first. So here's another commentary I want to ask when it comes to men and communication, or put it out there. Sometimes men have a hard time communicating what's on their heart, and many times they never fully do. What do you gentlemen have to say about that when it comes to men and communication?
Jay?
Well,
Well, I think that, communicating from the heart, if that young man was raised to have his emotions suppressed, then that could be very difficult for that individual. If he feels like communicating from his heart makes him vulnerable and attackable, he may try, and he's done that before, and he's been hurt. He may feel as if he can't do that any longer. But I find that the best way to overcome that is simply by doing the thing that you fear the most, making yourself vulnerable. I do it all the time. I know that when I walk into a room full of investors, that if they're white investors, I know that the first thing that they notice is that I'm Black. And when they hear the name Ahmed, they probably think that I'm Arab or something like that. So I know that I have certain challenges to overcome, but that's part of living in life, and I accept it and welcome it.
Okay. Before we go further, because I know that must have been a good I did a good comment there because Tony jumped back in. But before we do come back, I will say welcome to Tatiana and welcome to Van. Long time Van Go not see, but hope everything is good. Tony, I know, and I know Jay has something to say, but Tony, come on back. What's up?
Fear still is a driving thing for most men, and it really, really gets in the way of men really communicating. I'm not even gonna say communicating, really sharing what they're thinking, because the fear of presenting themselves as being weak is a driving thing for men of all races.
Absolutely. I'll agree with that. I'll agree with that. Jay, you want to add on that? And then Xanadu is on fire with another question. But Jay, what do you want to add in regards to what Ahmed and Tony have shared?
I think they made some great points, because I was that kid. I was that guy who was afraid to speak because of growing up in an abusive home and feeling like my if I shared my heart, I'm in deep trouble. If I share any thought, I'm in deep trouble. And so it took a few years to overcome that and to trust the fact that my words mattered, my thoughts mattered, my opinions mattered, and I could speak my mind with respect, of course, to people. But it took some time for that to happen. But yeah, I think men are still afraid, at least some men are, to really share what's really deep inside of their heart. for what they might be judged for.
Anadu is on fire, and you, as I said, everyone thinks I asked the challenging questions. Oh, I think she's taken my spot tonight. She is asking, do you all as men carefully choose to, when to and not to communicate?
Veronica will say yes.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the environment. It depends on the tone of the environment. Sometimes, if I'm in evaluation mode and the environment is hostile, I may take a recessive position to evaluate and look for ways of de-escalating situations. If it's friendly, then sometimes I step forward and exert my masculinity. So it just kind of depends. But I'm not just like sitting around yapping and yapping and yapping all day long.
Yeah, the Bible says, to be quick to listen and slow to speak. And sometimes there's much wisdom.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
If I were in a room full of my elders, then I would be more recessive. I would be listening more to gain knowledge and wisdom.
Amen to that.
Very good point. Very, very good point. When you gentlemen look at the younger male generation, what concerns or what things do you feel they have right when, and it's a general comment, when it comes to communication? Whether it's, pardon me?
I'm afraid they might not. I'm just afraid they might not have enough older men in their life that they could be able to spend some time with in order to learn how to communicate. Mentorship is huge. It was for me, and I see again at these seminars and stuff like that. There are a lot of young men that come, and they're dying for an older man to come into their life and to be able to listen to and to impart into. That's one of the things I pray about a lot.
I'm afraid that I think with younger men, one of the major issues for them is, we talked about modeling and role models, but a lot of them have grown up looking at images in media, and the images that they've seen growing up in media happen to be, for all intents and purposes, negative. And because those images are so negative, they think that is the reality. And it's not, but they think it is.
Right.
And so they emulate those images that they see on TV, when there are other images that they really need to model, but those images are not where they can see them. In other words, I'm just saying that I think for most young African American men, a lot of them, particularly in the inner city, don't get to see the positive male African American men that they can model. I'm not going to say that they're not there. I just don't think that they get to see them as much as they need to. And I want to say this about media in general. I think that it's important for us to recognize that when we're looking at media, that we have to understand that when you're looking at television in particular, and you see images of majority men. You will see majority men in a variety of different types of imagery. You will see them, as capital, men of capitals of industry. You will see them as clowns. You will see them as geeks. You will see them as this, that, the other. And the list goes on and on and on. But unfortunately, when you look in terms of media for African American images, they typically have to be negative. And then if they're not negative, I'm not sure if Jay or Ahmed or even you, Dr. Vibe, who mentioned it, but we talked about those images that are, flawed. And they happen to be, flawed. If they're not, if they're a police officer, they might be a crooked cop. If they're a police officer, they may look, they might not have any character. They're flawed in some way or another. Then they're, a gangster or a thief, a robber, or some type of, so you don't have those positive images. And I would dare say that the images are out there. Unfortunately, the media does not, well, I guess there's not money in those images for media to share.
Ahmed, what do you want to add on that? I'm going to come back to Jay on something, but based on what Tony said. But Ahmed, what do you want to add on to that?
Well, one of the things that I instruct my sons in, and I'm always a little irritated because with the way media is today, so accessible, they're constantly walking around with headphones in, and whenever I need to convey information to them quickly, they have to disengage their headphones and say, huh, and I'm like, listen, I need you to be ready to receive information at any time I'm giving it to you. And as it points to what Tony was saying, when you listen to some of the music that they're listening to, the singers or rappers or whatever are now using a lot of auto-tune. So their voice is sounding, either really mechanical or distorted. And there are times that I'm listening to them, I can hear some of that when I'm listening to my son speak. I can hear some of that come through in their speech. And I have to, make adjustments to their speech sometimes to help them stay on course. So I think the music and the headphones, and you walking around like that all day and you're listening to, what they call trap music now, where the rappers aren't even speaking clearly. It's all jumbled with auto-tune. So it's definitely something that I keep my eye on and have to keep in check.
Okay, so Jay, you've heard, and the viewers here, whether you're live or pre-recorded, you've heard some of the challenges in regards to young African Americans in regards to communication. What do you see from your eyes when it comes to Caucasian or white young Americans? What are they lacking, or what are your concerns when it comes to their communication styles?
Yeah, it may not be the same criteria, but I hear a lot of young men actually talk about the same kind of things. I had a young man just come up to me the other day who was distraught because he could no longer keep up with the picture of what his other young friends were giving him as what a man should be. And that was having nice clothes, being a good athlete, and those kind of pictures that he was just tired of trying to compete with that. He just wanted to be himself. And this was a white young man of 17 years old. And I can hear that, from talking from a cross section of society. I've heard similar things. I think all our young men are crying out for other men to step in there and say, hey, you know what? We didn't do it perfectly, but this is what we did, and this is what works. We want to share it with you, and we want to walk alongside of you, helping you when we can, and not coming down like we know it all, but we want to walk with you, because that's the best way to mentor someone, is to walk alongside of them anyways. But you know what? I white, black, you know, I hear the same cry. You know, they just want men in their lives that mean something to them.
An interesting point you make there, Jay, is that I've been doing these online conversations for a while now, and I'm hearing the same, more and more I'm hearing the same concerns from people from different backgrounds. You know, I'm hearing the same concerns. So earlier on, and I believe you had said, Jay, about when you go into an event, you say hi to different people. I'm going to encourage men to communicate with other men, because believe it or not, you're going to find out you have things in common with them that you probably didn't think you had in common with them.
Absolutely.
I think that's a form of communication. You're not going to have everything in common, obviously, but there'll be things that you didn't know you had in common with them that will go, oh, wow. Oh, wow. I didn't know that. Didn't know that. Didn't know that at all. Here's another area of communication I wanted to have you gentlemen talk about with men in communication. When men communicate, are they more used to or more prone to communicate on an individual rather than part of a team?
Elaborate a little more, Dr. Vibe.
All right. So, for example, appreciation in the workplace. Let's take an example. In the workplace, do men, when it comes to communication, more emphasize on individual performance rather than group performance? Do men, when it comes to communication, look at I achieved instead of being part of a group that achieved?
I think that's based on maybe personality. When for myself, I like to be part of a team, and I like to say we won. I like other people to share in the success. I get a lot of joy seeing other people do good. So I think that's maybe personality. That's my opinion.
Other two gentlemen?
Yeah. I think the team aspect is my bent as well. I would love, as a pastor, you know, I want the group of people that I help shepherd to succeed, to grow and to mature and to affect their community in a positive way. And when they do so, obviously that reflects back on my leadership, but I take great joy in that, because they're set free to do the things that they were designed to do in the first place. Same thing with my family. If I can influence them from the way I father them, and they become the men and the young women that they're supposed to be according to God's design, well, then I have succeeded. So the whole group effort appeals to me tremendously.
Tony?
You know, I would think that, you know, in an ideal world, that the group would be, you know, what's paramount. I don't think that it is. And the reason why I don't think that it is because it's a mindset where everything is instant gratification. And when you are operating out of everything being instant gratification, then that typically will leave out the group or team mechanism for doing things or accomplishing things.
All right. Here's another thing I'll put out there when it comes to men in communication. When it comes to communicating, do you think that men's range of emotions are limited compared to women?
That's the danger.
Well, but before you answer that, Xanadu, I had to get at least one good question in tonight because you were getting all the good ones. So I had to lay one down.
I think men can express the same emotions as women, but we do it differently.
So someone out there will say that's a real
But-
safe answer, but I'm going to let you go.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And I guess what I mean by that is this: is obviously anger is anger. If it's a gender, there's no difference. Anger is anger, but how I express anger would be different than my wife expresses anger. My voice might get loud. I might pace a little bit more. I may want to walk out the door and because I'm furious and I don't want to say something stupid. Where my wife, her voice may not raise like mine, but the intensity behind her words and the words that she discovers to say to me are words that I might never ever heard of before. So it's different how we express anger, if that makes any sense. Same emotions, different expression.
Who else wants to jump into that pool?
I'll jump in the shark infested waters. Yeah. I agree with Jay. I think that we definitely express emotions. We have the same range. Sometimes men, we hide when we're hurt, whereas a female may not hide when she's hurt. Sometimes men may go into their poker face, but deep inside, they may be cut pretty deep from what was said. A woman may start crying when she's just hurt. Sometimes we bury stuff and then we cry in the dark. So I think that we just express it differently, and sometimes we bury emotions like hurt and pain.
Tony.
Yeah, I agree with what both Ahmed and Jay have said. That we've already talked about this. That we typically wear a mask. Men wear a mask, and we may as already been said. If it could be cutting us to the core, we're going to keep it inside. We're going to bury it deep. We're going to present this front that we're a brick wall and nothing can break us down and nothing can hurt us, and we repel the water, and that's in the DNA of men, I think.
Excellent. That's good stuff. Welcome to the Conversation Plus One. Also, Realtor Mike Will, and Tashiada is back. And Xanadu has taken the crown back from me. Here she goes. Would any of you consider yourselves mentors to young men who you are not related to? And if you are, how do you communicate to those young men who are not related to you?
Well, I'll start off with that one. And my answer to it is this. Almost every job that I've ever had has been directly or indirectly me working as a mentor. And so, I mentioned that I worked for the Boys and Girls Club. I worked for Big Brothers Big Sisters. I worked as a social worker, case manager, social worker. I worked as an educator for special education students. I worked very hard in my church. And so the answer to the question is that most of my interaction in public has been as a mentor. And so I'm going to stop there.
Ahmed. Before we go on, Jay and Ahmed, we also want to welcome Askia Jones. Also want to welcome at 123 Honey Lynn Jones. Thanks very much for stopping by. Go ahead, Ahmed and Jay. So if you do get the opportunity to communicate with other men, how easy, how difficult is it to communicate with them?
So I've been, like I said earlier, I've been in martial arts my entire life, and part of the process is to, once you achieve wherever you are, if you're a beginner and then you achieve the next rank, then that makes you now the mentor for the people below, the rank below you. So I started training at 4 years old. So I've been kind of in this mentor role since then. I've also worked with my son's football team as a assistant football coach, and I've owned and operated my martial arts school for a number of years, and I've always worked with not just young men but young ladies as well. I don't know how to define how I communicate with them because it's on an individual basis.
Yep.
My young cousin was brought to my school one time, and I normally hug all the students, but she was very standoffish for a very long time, and I just let her be in that space until she felt comfortable enough to embrace me like that. Then I couldn't get her off of me, but you know, so I communicate with where I see the need, how I see the need.
Good stuff.
Awesome.
To anyone out there, there is a seat open. Tony has gracefully exited, so if anyone wants to join that, are there any areas that you gentlemen feel you need to improve when it comes to communication?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, first is my marriage. I mean, you know, I've been married for 34 years, and I believe I'm married to the most beautiful heart on the planet. And she's a wonderful listener and a wonderful friend, my best friend. And I am still learning how to communicate to her. And so I first and foremost, I need help in learning how to speak my wife's language more and more and more. I think I've gotten pretty good after 34 years, but there's still a lot to learn.
Ahmed.
I definitely I agree with Jay. I've been married to a beautiful woman for 21 years, and
Awesome.
I have it's like the more each and every day I'm learning sometimes how ineffective I am and that I have been as it relates to communicating. So I'm really practicing my listening skills, listening more with my heart than with my ears. And,
That's right.
you know, just really trying to get better each and every day.
So both of you said with the queens in your life, but do you see any improvement areas of opportunity when it comes to communicating with other men?
All the time. I mean, you know what? It's when those times when I fail at it that I learn the most. This past week, I had an opportunity to speak into someone's life. I thought it went really well. A couple of days later, I find out it didn't go as well as I thought it went, and I had to ask forgiveness from this person because I didn't really connect to their heart like I thought I did, or communicated to them what I thought they needed to hear. And so from that failure, from that missed opportunity, I learned so much more, you know, and I feel like I'm pretty skilled at this stuff. I'm still learning because everybody is.
Ahmed and then Tony, who is back. So Ahmed next.
Tony.
Yeah, I mean, with men, I definitely evaluate the individual to try to see what communication, what need they're giving off. Like I said, a lot of times the communication can be nonverbal. I can say a lot of words and do a lot of talking, but the full meaning isn't conveyed until the end of the conversation. And I give that hug. I know that it was received. That if the words weren't received, the love was received.
Tony, something inspired you to come back in.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think a lot of times, it's not even about what we say. Sometimes it's about, and this is going to sound strange when I say this, but it's hearing and listening. Hearing and listening. And you might think that they're the same, but they're not. So a lot of times, and I'll give you a good example of how we do stuff. So people, this is something universal that all people do this. Somebody will say, "How you doing?" And before the person can actually respond and say, because what they're going to say is, "Well, I'm doing okay," even if they're not. Mm-hmm. So before they can even respond, we have moved on. We're not interested. We're really not interested in even hearing what they said. So that's why I said, for most people, if you are able to hear and listen, I think that is that when you begin to do that, when you stand by and actually hear the response and maybe say to the person, "I genuinely want to know how you're doing or how you're feeling," and you let them know that, that you talked about communication. That's communication. I just wanted to say that, but I really want to get some of these other young men that we have, in the room.
Yeah, and there we've got Xanadu's twin Esrashim flying in with questions too now. So here's another conversation piece. Esrashim would say, "I'd like to hear more about some of the non-verbal ways men communicate."
Well, I think what I just said speaks to that, hearing and listening, because a lot of times, particularly for young men, if they think that you genuinely are going to listen to what they have to say, then they will share it. But if they don't think that you care, then they're not say anything. So that is something that the authenticity of who you are as a person will allow you to be a vessel or receptive to hearing and listening to what people have to say, particularly young men. Because if they know that you really care about what they have to say, they will share it with you. Well, particularly if it's just you and them and there's no audience.
It goes to a famous line by the late Zig Ziglar said, "People don't care how much you know until you know how much they care." How much you care. Sorry, you care. And I think that's so very important. That is one of the things I do at least a few times a week, especially before a show. I'll at least do it with the number of shows I have, or I'll call out people and just say, "Ask a guy, how you doing?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they know I'm not asking a fluff question. I'm asking how they're doing. Or even better, to communicate with a man, I ask them, how's their heart? And I don't mean your physical heart.
Yeah.
How is their emotional heart? A lot of them will, and many men have never been asked that question. They'll look at you like you're on crack. What are you asking that for? What are you asking that for?
Yeah. I'll often,
You know?
when I ask someone how they're doing, whatever the response is, I'll ask them, "Are you lying to me?" And that usually will stop people in their tracks as well. They'll go, "What do you mean? Are you what?" And I go, "Are you telling me the truth? Are you really doing okay? Because I like to hear about it if you're not." And that's giving people permission to talk. You know, giving them an opportunity that you're willing to slow down and, you know, leave your own highway to go onto their highway and listen to their story. And you know, so that question, "How's your heart?" and those kind of questions, they throw people for a loop for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just want to hear, I got to, Esprashim says, when I see people in person, I don't typically ask them how they are doing. I ask them what was the last thing that made them smile. That's a good question too.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's a good question.
I just wanted to say, Dr. Vibe, a lot of times you don't have to say a lot.
Exactly.
And I'll give you a real good example. And most of you know that I'm sharing my journey about, you know, how I'm making change in my life and trying to get to better health. And one of the things that Dr. Vibe does to me all the time is that I'll post something about, you know, extremely low blood sugar or some weight I lost or whatever, you know, and all he'll say is boom.
Yeah.
All he'll say is boom. And when he says boom, I know that he's with me, that you know, and that's, he just types it in, boom. And I know that he's with me, he's supporting me, he's encouraging me, he's got my back, he's supporting me, he's uplifting. Now, he didn't say all that. All he said was boom.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes that's all it takes.
Yeah.
You know, I really, as far as the issue of nonverbal communication, if I'm meeting someone and we're face to face, depending on the handshake, whether the person keeps a locked arm or whether the person welcomes me in, sometimes can make me communicate more deeply based on that.
Amen.
Esprashim is. Go ahead, Jay.
Just for communication non-verbally, so we're trying to get back to that question, is that, you know, well, I'm a hugger and I will hug just about anything that moves if they allow me to. It's one of the ways I communicate my caring. Now, you got to judge. There are some people who do not want to be hugged, and you can't hug those people. But, you know, you can put a hand on their shoulder, right. You can shake their hands, you can look into their eyes and communicate that you're actually interested in hearing what they have to say.
Right. And for me, Jay, that you know, I'm a hugger.
So we should get together and hug.
So that right. so that you know, that physical contact lets me know where the person is, what space they want to be in, and how they want to be addressed. And sometimes it takes time for me to get through those barriers to let them know that being with me is a safe place.
Great. That's great.
Well, I think one of the things that have come up in the last few moments is, I'll make a statement, whether it's right or wrong, who knows, but with men and effective communication, it takes investment of time.
Yeah. Yep.
For many men.
Time's a great commodity to give someone. Great currency.
Right. Well, okay. And Esprashim is asking, is touch your preferred method of communicating affection? It's different for everybody. For men, it's very different. You've got to You know, you got to know their language. And again, that's why I say you invest.
Mm-hmm.
You've got, for men got to invest if they want to be effective. And if people want to know about men, they've got to invest and watch them in action. It's one of those things.
Absolutely.
Well, Ash Rashim is asking a weird kind of question. She said, rub of the head, stroke of the beard, rub on the back. Nah. So, so I'm not going to, go up and just start rubbing Dr. Bob on his head. He may take that as a violation. But the patient is going to be
bad hair day,
very
by the
masculine.
Way, so don't go there.
The physical contact. So the communication is going to be very masculine in nature. The handshake is going to be a firm handshake. The hug is not going to be, the type of hug that I would give my wife. So it's going to be very masculine. But in that, the sense is going to that. I can't explain what happens, but that male understands the communication because it's reciprocated. And then, then the follow-up communication from that lets me know that physical communication, was it received or wasn't it?
Point well taken. Tony, want to add to that at all?
Well, I think that we talked about team earlier, and sporting activities, is totally appropriate for another man to hit another man on his behind at a sporting event, but that's not appropriate in a different type of setting, right? So I think that there's communication on when it's appropriate to have whatever type of physical interaction that men need to have in whatever setting.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, I'm a very affectionate person. It's part of my love language, and my boys have gotten that. So I have 5 sons. The youngest is 17, my oldest is 27. And when they all get together, they're all over each other. I mean, they're banging on each other, they're hugging each other, they're laying on each other. And it's all one of the ways they communicate their love as brothers. And it's a beautiful thing to see because I think they got it from me, and I'm very grateful for that. But if they did that in the middle of the street, that might.
Okay, absolutely. Ash Rashim, it keeps on going here. I notice when some men greet each other, they touch quite a bit in a very brotherly sort of way. I love to see it. Hugs, daps, pushes on the shoulder, pound. Yeah, that's true. And again, that's their communication style. They know each other's communication style, which is really important.
And that goes back to what you said, Dr. Bob, about investment too. Because there has to be a certain level of investment in order for you to be able to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's another thing too with communication, effective communication, especially with most men, you have to gain and earn their trust. Head nod is another thing too. Very important. With a lot of Black communities, a head nod is a form of saying hello.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it depends on whether you give the nod up like that or whether you give the nod down like that.
You want to explain that difference? We know it, but you want to explain that?
So yeah, the head up is kind of like, hey, what's up? It's kind of like that, like, you good? And this one down here is kind of like, I'm good. You know, it's yeah, it's like I'm good.
Absolutely, that is good. That is a great explanation. As Ahmed, you have got it down pat. You're going to be our master of Black communication. You've got, instead of an MBA, you got an MBC. Absolutely, that is
right.
Good. There you go. I have another.
Add that to my resume.
Yes, come on in. No, Tony's going to jump off because he can
take the seat.
Well, Ahmed's jumped off, so Askia, come on in. Everyone's jumped. Okay, I did. Oh, guys, like, come on now. But while Askia's probably coming in, welcome Danielle Booz. Great to see you as always. Also, welcome Sisterhood Expo. Would love to have you come on the show. And also Askia, and welcome So Steph. And here we go. Welcome to the stage, the one, the only Askia Jones.
What's up?
Everybody's up. Hey, I heard a rumor. I heard that you and Michelle Obama are going to be running for the next election.
I absolutely wish. But did she not kill that speech? But did she not kill that speech though?
Oh my! Wow!
Killed it. I mean, killed
it. Wow! Like I think we need to do a blab on Michelle Obama. Just that. I think there's a blab on that. But yeah, she that was phenomenal. But that's another conversation. But interesting. Well, we'll discuss offline. There was one person who had something very interesting to say about that, but we'll take it offline. Askia, what you want to talk about? Head nod, communication.
No, I just wanted to add something to what Ahmed said because I love what he said. Because I've always did it differently. You know, if I'm greeting someone and let's say it's a guy maybe like I identify that's close to my age group or someone that I feel like we're kind of familiar with, I kind of give the head nod up. But I don't know if it's just me, and I was wishing maybe Ahmed or some other people could come in, but if I greet an elder, like somebody that maybe like an older gentleman, that someone maybe like I identify as someone I want to show some reverence to, I kind of do the head kind of down a little bit. You know what I mean? To kind of let them, hey man, you know, just to kind of show some respect. You know, and so when he mentioned the head nod and the head up, I've always kind of done that because I felt like the head up to a guy who's probably, it's kind of like that's it. Like Xander said, it's just kind of a way for me just to kind of say, hey man, you know, respect. You know what I'm saying? You're OG. You know, I want to make sure I show you some respect because I'm pretty sure you done been through some things that I haven't been through. So I just want to let you know, man, that I respect you.
Exactly. While you're here, any more comments you want to share with regards to men in communication? Where do you feel it stands right now, men in communication? Are they good? Are there areas of opportunity in your experience that men need to come to get better at?
I just think we communicate differently. I think I challenge the notion that men like we're all kind of cut from the same cloth. You know what I mean? You know, we all not even like all black men communicate differently. All men in general communicate differently. Now, I'm probably going to get in trouble for saying this, but I will say this,
and that's why. Okay.
That's probably why you got me on, right? But this is not a bad thing. I think one of the things that I've learned, I'm not a really good communicator. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not a really good. I'm the type of person that like to just stop the bleeding. You know, and if something happens, I don't really want to really get into the fact that I've been cut and try to explain how I got cut and what's going on and how I feel and how if it hurts or if it's burning or the sensation. I just want to stop the bleeding. I think men traditionally, when it comes to problems and issues, we try to bury it. I think women try to plant it. And let me give you an example. I think we try to push it as further down as possible and sometimes put it in our subconscious where we just try to suppress it because we don't really want to deal with it, or we just want to just kind of move on and get past it. I think what I've learned, and this is just my experience being raised by a single mother, being raised around some fascinating women, sisters, aunts, even being married for a long time. I think the reason why I say women planted is because society's made it very difficult, and I think we have a large role to play in that, in helping women repair and heal from certain situations that they go through. So when they experience certain things, they plant it, and because they find themselves coming back to it. And sometimes they find themselves kind of watering it, giving it sunlight, and it grows. And sometimes it kind of becomes something that they carry, if that makes any sense. It becomes something that, that they even harbor. And I think that's something that we as men, I think, have to do better in helping women in repairing. I think, unfortunately, that's where I hate the term, where that term bag lady comes from. When they say there's women who just carry all this baggage, and I hate that. But I think that may be part of where that comes from. How can we help them? Man.
Hold on. That's another blab.
That's another blab. Okay, thank you. You just rescued me on that one.
That's another blab. That's a whole other conversation.
All the women in here, I don't know how many women in here, put a one if you have seen this, experienced this, have done this. And I see this a lot. And I have a lot of female friends, a lot of female relatives, and particularly women that are African American. If you agree, put a one. If you disagree, put a 0. I find myself where when women have been hurt, when they have been damaged, particularly in a relationship, they learn how to use social media to heal themselves. Let me give you an example. You'll begin to see them post certain things like, I don't have to have a king to be a queen. Or one of my favorite statements that my sister tells me a lot is that just because I'm a soldier doesn't mean you need to put me through war. So what they have a tendency to do is they begin to share all these different memes and different quotes, and I see it all the time. I mean, sometimes I go to Facebook and I'm flooded with it, and I'm like, she just got out of a bad relationship, she just broke up, and I can just tell. And it's like that's their way of just letting people know that I'm men don't do that. You're not gonna find men in general going through a situation where we broadcast our pain, even if we're trying to mask it. We're not really trying to publicize what we're dealing with, and that's what I meant by we bury it. They're planning it because they're really trying to find a way to get answers, to get help, because whether it's dealing with abandonment issues, whether it's dealing with rejection, whether it's dealing with dishonesty, disloyalty, someone that they thought they put their trust in, their faith in, and that person didn't give that back. It wasn't reciprocal. They find themselves vocalizing that now a lot through social media, and they find ways of doing that, not just through their own words, but through quotes and through messages and different things like that. And I see that so much. And so I think from a communication standpoint, I got to get a lot better. I've gotten better, but I think for me, and I'll close on this note, I'm in a unique situation because about 5 years ago, I recently got remarried. My first marriage I was married for like 16 years, and I got remarried. And my wife, love my wife, fantastic woman. She never had ever been in a relationship with a man. And let me give you an example. She went through a pretty traumatic life as a young person. She left home when she was about 15, 16 years old. I think around that same time, she actually got custody of her little brother. So she raised her little brother all the way till she was probably like 19, 20, somewhere in there. then when she got in some pretty bad relationships, then she was a single mother for a long period of time. So, and then the last relationship she was in, it was a guy who was kind of like a mama's boy who really didn't take on the responsibility as a father. So she was that single mother. And not only was she taking care of her son, she's also having to take care of this guy. Well, I come along and I'm the kind of person, I don't need anybody to take care of it. You know, I'm a person that I just got out of being a single dad who was raising 3 women. So she never met anyone like me. So she never ever, it was a new experience for her to be in a relationship with a man. And Dr. Vibe have heard me say this many times, that I think the difference between a boy and a man is that a boy feels like he still has to be served, but a man realizes it's his duty to serve. And so she meets me and now she don't want for anything. I mean, I'm just being completely honest. I'm not saying to be, but she don't want for anything. She's winning, and I'm winning because I'm blessed to have her. We're both winning. And but what happened was it was tough for her because she didn't know how to communicate with me because she had been so used to taking care of, I'm going to put in quotes, men. Raised her little brother, raised her son as a single parent, and was actually kind of taking care of the other guy. All of a sudden, now she doesn't know how to deal with this experience. So she found herself in the beginning doing the same thing with me. Like she kind of had to nurture me and take care of me. And I used to say things like, hey, I'm not your son. And I wasn't saying it in a bad way. I was just saying the way that you married a man, you have a husband now. You don't need to take care of me. I take care of you. And I don't mean take care of you from the standpoint of you're powerless. You know, I know women get upset when sometimes men say that. I was raised by one. Trust me. What I'm saying is, see, when I say take care of a woman and when I say protect a woman, I don't mean that you can't take care of yourself. I mean, I'm going to make sure I don't hurt you, damage you, to a point where now you feel so vulnerable that if this relationship don't work, that carries over and over and over and over again, where you can't ever get into a healthy relationship. That's me protecting you. That means if you're looking for a loyal person, my job to protect you is to be what? Loyal. Not to walk around like ADT with a shield and a gun around making sure nothing happens. No. If you're looking for a person to be responsible and accountable, protecting you is being responsible and accountable. That's what protection is. So it's not this whole thing that you can't take care of yourself. Trust me, like I said, I was raised by a single mother. My oldest sister also helped raise me. So I know what women can do. You know what I'm saying? I have 3 beautiful daughters, 20, 21, 24. And they make me proud every day. So, and I empower them. So I don't know how I got to this point. But okay. In closing, I think men communicate differently, and I think I'm going to touch on a little bit to answer a man question just a little bit. We have to get out of when he asks how can we help repair them. We have to realize that communication isn't just paying the bills. Communication just isn't making sure that the lights are on. Communication just is. I'll even go this far. Communication just isn't that I stay home and you know where I'm at. You know, I'm not in the streets. You know, sometimes we think accessibility is enough. You know, we're available, but you could be in the house, but it's almost like you're not present. So I think one of the ways to repair is to figure out how do we communicate outside of just doing. Because sometimes that's how we've been raised and we've been taught that, you know, well, I took care of this, I take care of that. I got a friend of mine and he makes sure that, great guy, he makes sure that he gets at a certain day of the week, he takes his wife's car, he fills it up. So his wife never has to fill her car with gas. You know, he makes sure he does the oil changes. He takes care. That's his way of communicating. And that's his way of saying I love you. And he's not a very vocal person, but he's a good man. He's a good guy. But he and his wife struggle with communication. And he comes to me and he's like, I don't know what I need to do. I'm doing the best that I can. And he's struggling with communication because he's putting in the action. And so many times men are being criticized and beat up because they say, well, I hear the words, but I don't see the action. But when they become more action, then it's like, well, I appreciate the action, but I don't hear the words. And so I think in repairing, we got to figure out a way how to balance it. You know, how do we match words and action together? And look, at the end of the day, something's going to be missing, probably. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, you're not going to be able to make a person, male or female, completely happy. I think, and I'm definitely going to close on this. I think what I've learned is that in most cases, when men meet a woman, all he wants her to be is just stay exactly the way you were. The person that I met, this is who you are. I love this person. Don't change. In some cases, women meet a guy and they see potential, which is great. They see what he can be, which is fantastic. So they have a greater expectation from us to grow and evolve and get better and communicate more and do this more and do all these things. You know, we were like, hey, I was like this when you met me. I don't want you to change. I just want you to be the exact person that I met. Don't change. Be who you are. So we got to learn how to grow, how to mature with our wives or our women so that they see that as evidence that we are at least putting in the effort to learn how to communicate more. And I'll close on that.
No problem. After that, Jay, anything you want to add on Askia's commentary?
I think for a man who said he was not a good communicator, he pretty much communicated in an awesome way, bro. You did great. You were awesome. So many good points. And I love the fact that you affirm women with your heart and with your words, man. That is awesome. You know, bless you for that. So I can't add anything but just say thanks for sharing your heart, man.
No, I appreciate that, man. Appreciate it. Dr. Vibe has a way to have you.
Oh yeah, he does it good.
Well, it's all in the art. It's all in the art of communication and getting you guys in and again, getting guys in a comfortable environment. You see the results, everybody. When you get them in a comfortable environment, you get their heart.
Yeah,
you get
Absolutely.
their.
Hey, look, I got one, guys. Thank you for letting me chime in, Dr. Vibe. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much to the family. Take care.
I will. Love you.
All right. So anyone else want to jump in before we probably do an after show? This has been another epic conversation on the Dr. Vibe show. And I want to shout out to Danny. Thank you so much saying your titles are brilliant. I try, you know, if they're brilliant, the only reason why is I try to make them simple. I don't try to make them complicated. So that's where we go. That's where we're at. So we'll probably end it here on this, and there'll be a little bit of an after show for those who want to stick by. Any last words, Askia, you want to add in regards to men and communication?
I think I said probably too much already.
No, you're good. Okay, no problem. Well, it's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show, the home of epic conversations. I'm also the host and producer of another number of different conversations, and I've heard rumors that Askia and Ahmed have their plans to get me involved in some more stuff too. So Askia is getting his thumbs up. So we're already going on with that. But I'd like to say, yeah, actually, here's an interesting point about effective communication. I was blessed enough to be on a show on Saturday in Toronto called Sister Talk. And it is a show for women. And I was asked to be the first male to be on the show because they think I'm somewhat of an effective communicator. So that's important. But I think with men, in regards to communication, I think the first person you got to be an effective communicator with men is yourself. And one of the things I always say to men is the way you talk to other people the same way you talk to yourself? Because if it isn't, men, there's a disconnect in communication. So work on your own communication. You know, as I always say, when you say something, the first person that hears it is yourself, man. You are the first person that hears your communication. You're the first person when you do something, you're the first person that feels it. So work on that communication. And if you're not feeling good about it, reach out to people. That's another form of communication, reaching out. When you don't have all the answers, man or men, reach out. On that point, if you want to touch base with me, it's Twitter at DRVIBESHOW. At email address dr.vibe@the.drvibeshow.com. Want to thank everyone for stopping by tonight. Those are still here. So Steph, Daniel Booz, nice to see you coming back more on Blab. Of course, Askia, Ahmed, thank you for being here since basically the beginning. Tony, thanks for the number of times you come into the conversation. Nice seeing you again. Big shout out to who's been here right from the beginning. Lamils, thank you so much. Mother of 8, we've got to get you on this conversation someday when you're ready. Also, Danny, thank you so much. S. Rashim for laying down some outstanding questions. What about the 30th? Xanadu, they're doing some communication. So we're going to stop the convo here. As always, I like to say you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles and you're a solution for someone's problem. And if you're not here now, you should probably catch the after conversation. It sounds like there's a lot of good stuff going on. And just to promote, tomorrow night, and Xanadu, thank you for your great questions tonight. Thank you for steering the ship tonight and driving it. Tomorrow night, I'm continuing the series, What Do Blacks Want and Why? Tomorrow night, we're going to talk about, Askia doesn't even know about this, so he's going to like this. What do blacks want and why when it comes to housing and shelter? Tomorrow night, 9 o'clock Eastern time, because last night, hit it out of the park. I got a whole bunch of conversations happening about what do blacks want and why. Tomorrow night, housing. So be there, 9 o'clock. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith and appreciate all of you. And see you on the flip side. God bless.